I'm excited to talk about my favorite topic, circles. So yeah, talk will be about Circles 2.0, fair money for all, or how we can actually finally bring that project to the big world. Let's start again with the basis of what Circles is. So Circles is this ambitious project that says we want to reinvent money and we want to make it as fair as possible. And yeah, it certainly came as an inspiration from Bitcoin, and I already shared in my opening that Bitcoin was inspiring and is still amazing, but I would say Bitcoin still has this property that currently roughly 1 or 2% in the world own Bitcoin, and it's not, to me, necessarily clear if the world would be in a better place if the rest of the world would also now start using Bitcoin. Those 1 or 2%, to whom I certainly belong, would be in a much better place, but again, it's not clear to me how it would be for the others. So Circles tries to be this project and says we want to have a decentralized money, just like Bitcoin, but we want to have it as fairly and as equally distributed or as fair to all participants as possible. So those are the rules. Anyone can sign up, and from that moment on, start minting, start generating 1 circle per hour or 24 per day, and then trust connections between the people form, and that essentially means that if two people trust each other, they basically say, I'm accepting your money, you're accepting my money. And through those trust connections, circles and payments can flow. And we will go into that in a little bit more detail. Yeah, 1 circle per hour, simple rule. There is a second very important thing, that there is the constant issuance of new money, but there is also, to eventually come into a balance, there's also a constant sink, destroying of money, or demurrage. So essentially, in Circles, all balances, wherever they are constantly slightly reduced by a rate of 7% per year. And how that looks like on a graph over a 140-year life or time span is kind of that in the beginning you start, or this is kind of just looking at one individual person. In the beginning it would start to issue at 24 units per day, something like 8,000 per year, and it's pretty linear. But then, of course, the effect of the 7% kicks in, so the old balances will reduce, and the new balances will, or kind of continuously new balances will come into existence until it reaches an equilibrium where the total amount of circles in existence, 7% of that is pretty much exactly, or will be exactly the same as the issuance per year. And kind of in this hypothetical scenario, the person dies when they are 80, and then they stop issuing new money, and basically their money will still be for some years in circulation, but it will over time kind of disappear. So how that looks like in a whole network, by not just looking at a single person, the whole network will always converge against this magic number of 125,143 circles times the number of people in the network, so who are participating. If that number at some point stays constant, at some point also then the total supply of circles will stay constant. Here's another way to think about that. So one way to think about circles is to say there is a global tax on all money, and this tax rate is at 7%. But the taxes that are kind of created through that are constantly redistributed among all participants. And how you as an individual participant end up in the system is that at this magic number that we just discovered, this around 124,000. If you hold that amount of circles, then quote unquote the taxes you are paying are exactly equal to the amount of new circles you are generating, so your quote unquote effective tax rate would be 0. If you hold less than that, you are getting more from the system, so you have a negative tax rate. And if you have more than that, all the way till infinity, your tax rate would kind of start to converge against 7%. So, yeah, again, that system is called demurrage, and it might sound, yeah, let's say crazy or at least unexpected or something we are not used to, that this is how money works, but actually it's not that different from how fiat money works. So in fiat money, yes, you can hold your $100, and in 50 years it will still be $100, but through inflation and through money expansion, the value of those $100 will, yeah, go dramatically down. So in total, the effect is very similar. Money, if you just let it sitting around, will kind of over time be devalued. And I would say the demurrage is kind of, in a way, just a more explicit or maybe even more honest way of doing that. Right, so now you might argue, why would I join the system? Why would I not join a system like Bitcoin, where I don't have to pay that tax? And I would argue there is no such thing as a trustless money, because you are always dependent on, or money in general is a social construct. If you are alone on an island, it's totally pointless to have money. So money always depends on that other people around you kind of also believe or kind of join that social contract and quote unquote honor that social contract. And in the case of Bitcoin, you hope, if you buy it today, you hope there will be someone who at a later point will buy it from you. Now, that kind of requires that people who are new to the system and don't necessarily have an incentive to join that system would still, essentially join the system and want to at some point acquire Bitcoin. And kind of a little bit, kind of a cheeky way of saying is that, I mean, the Bitcoin holders, max believers, they kind of are in this mindset, I just need to acquire Bitcoin now, then I can wait a long time, and then I will automatically be rich. And that in itself already shows, in my view, that the system is not necessarily sustainable, because obviously that is some behavior or kind of economy. Well, the world doesn't get rich from people one time buying something and then doing nothing. That's not how wealth is actual wealth is created. Still, I don't want to be too critical of Bitcoin. I think it has its place, and I just want to say it's not a replacement for circles, and those things are complementary. Here, now I want to show you a nice project that you can kind of try out in person here next. I mean, here there's a Circles booth, and we are selling or having this donation campaign where, whoops, sorry, I want to go, this donation campaign where you can acquire this NFT. The amounts, we will also kind of donate the amounts or kind of a similar amount of euros to a non-profit foundation Give Directly that supports UBI, but that's just a side note. It is more about kind of understanding how Circles transaction works. So here, this bottom, or this dot here is the receiving contract, or basically we call it organization that accepts Circles. And here each of those dots is a person that had donated to it. And here the green one is Fredo, who did the previous donation. And here you can see kind of the trust network. So here, in this row, you find people who are directly trusted, and essentially that's the number of people, I think, who were previously already at DappCon, that this account here trusted. So basically this account says, I'm accepting their circles. But those people, they trust, let's say, those people. And those people trust those people. So in that case, this person was trusted by that person, and that person was trusted by that person, and that person by that, and so on. And so finally, the circles flow through 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 hops until they reached their destination. And we will explain why that is super critical. Again, totally encourage you to try that out. And you will see a nice live animation. Here, just looking at similar things. So we have this Graph Explorer, and I just, for the fun of it, checked out the paths between Vitalik and this NFT tree project. And yeah, if he would donate, then one of those passes would be found. Why is that important? Because it is the core mechanism of circles to prevent Sybil attacks. And so again, reminder, Sybil attacks means simply, okay, if anyone can create an account, I can create many accounts. And in this example, Alice is the attacker, and Alice is actually creating many accounts. So here, fake account 1, 2, 3, and so on. And here is a shop, or just in general, here is the quote-unquote honest part of the network. And Alice is trusted by that shop, and that's all fine and good. So Alice is able to spend her Alice tokens to the shop. Initially, those, let's say this fake account is also able to spend at the shop by sending fake tokens to Alice, and Alice will send Alice tokens to the shop. And that's the really important part, that the shop is only accepting Alice tokens. So that means as soon as Alice runs, and this is already the example here, as soon as Alice runs out of her personal Alice token, then this connection is no longer existent. So now, of course, this fake token here could still be sent to Alice, and Alice would then have, or maybe all those fake tokens, all those 50, so in total 250 tokens could be sent to Alice, but none of them are spendable in the real network. So yeah, just creating fake accounts and trusting them, and maybe even trusting them with each other, or kind of creating more and trusting everyone, will in no way harm the real network, which is over here. Cool. So now let's make a brief look into the past and then go into the future, what comes next. So circles is as an idea already 10 years old, but it was launched in 2020, so almost 4 years now. And it started with a big success and went viral. So within hours, it went from this to this, and within weeks, it looked like that. So, but then, yeah, it very much fizzled out, or the numbers of here's distinct users trusting each other per week, yeah, kind of went to almost zero. This, by the way, was a random project. I've to this day no idea who exactly or what exactly that was. It was a Chinese project. I never really understood what it was doing, but it was building on circles in some form. So after, again, this early hype moment, there was circles activity, but it was very small and very local. That's what it looked like, and it was very nice. We had here interesting community in Berlin, but still, it didn't had really a reach into the world. So again, we had like very local markets, nice communities, but but it stayed really, really small. So now the question is, what can we do to actually enter, quote unquote, the big world? And yeah, had a short discussion with Vitalik about that, and clearly capital can make a big difference. And if it requires 100 million, we need to find a way to get 100 millions for circles. Just to give you a view of what entering the big world looks like more than kind of the pictures I just showed you, that's like entering the big world. But that's certainly also not exactly what we want. So if you go through Berlin, you find in many places kind of those huge ads and banners, and I mean, you probably know the orbs. So I'd say on the one side, we have the extreme kind of this very local, very non-profit, very small. And on the other side, we have the extreme of, well, big tech, Silicon Valley startup, hundreds of millions, kind of penetrating the world, as they like to say. So can we find a middle ground? Can we find a way to get sufficient resources behind it to be able to really scale and or really make a difference essentially in the world, but without compromising its core values? And to some extent, the fairness that is so important to us in Circles is a challenge, because there is not necessarily someone who has a direct, immediate, or kind of huge financial incentive in Circles. So again, in the WorldCoins of this world, of course, there is a quite decent investor team allocation. So of course, there's a huge incentive and huge money can flow in to make this work. In something like Bitcoin, again, there was not necessarily investors, but the early Bitcoin holders, again, had a huge incentive to grow the system. So how does it work in Circles? Because, again, it tries to be fair. So yes, everyone gets their fair share, but no one gets so much that they would really push it. So how can we solve that problem? And my answer to that is, while Circles at its core, I would not compromise and would keep the way it is as a public good, or kind of in the maximum possible fair way. But of course, there are different entities that can build things around it or on top it, or that can very well take a fee. And the first thing is already a chain. So at this point, Circles is Circles is in principle an idea. It's not tied to Gnosis chain, but right now the contracts are on Gnosis. And in that sense, Gnosis is the first entity that would have an interest in Circles, because simply lots of Circles users means lots of Gnosis chain users who are paying transaction fees. The second one is wallets, and I'm definitely suggesting that wallets should simply take a fee. So out of the 24, if there's a wallet that integrates Circles and you get 24 Circles a day, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the wallet simply saying, okay, 1 or 2 out of those 24 Circles that you get every day, we immediately take as a fee. And again, that's of course a mechanism for the wallet to have a big interest in getting Circles to many users and making sure that those Circles have a value. And we can do the same thing for invites. So if someone trusts or kind of invites new people to the system, we could actually do a similar thing, that this new person by default gives some part to the wallet, but also some part, again, maybe another one out of those 24 Circles, to the person that invited them, maybe for the first 1 or 2 years. And those things, I think it's important that they are not in the core protocol, but absolutely they should be used, because we need those incentives, and we need people who spend large resources to make all of that happen. So I am proposing, in a way, to Gnosis DAO to do a 30 million investment in circles, buying circles, and I will, in a way, now switch my head and kind of argue more from a DAO perspective why out of a DAO perspective that is interesting. First, how to not do it. So kind of just injecting capital does not always, certainly doesn't, or certainly you need to inject capital in smart ways. So absolutely no, or absolutely, I really like and respect all other projects that are working on UBI, and that was one of them, the UBI token. But yeah, so that's what we certainly want to try to avoid, how a circle price graph could look like. So what I'm proposing, and there will be a detailed proposal, is roughly that Gnosis is now in a position and or in a situation, and I went over that already in my opening, that we have a range of projects from Gnosis Pay, CowSwap, things like SDAI, EuroE, money markets. I think, well, we are at the stage where we believe those products are good and interesting, and we should now really focus on users and getting users in. And it's a simple thing to do, or the obvious thing, and people have asked us already to do it. For example, for something like Gnosis Pay, yeah, you can of course use GNO incentives and do some form of cashback or something like that. And what I'm arguing is that we can do it even more efficiently. We can say we are not directly giving GNO out, but instead users will automatically be, or kind of that's at least the default, that users on Gnosis will be guided or invited to immediately become circles users, so they will more or less automatically get some circles. And then if they use dApps, then that will essentially allow them, or kind of Gnosis DAO will set up in many different ways schemes to then buy circles from those users for GNO. And that of course provides an additional incentives for the users to use those apps or come even to the chain. It also helps in making sure that we achieve one of our goals, that we want users of the chain to be also owners of the chain. But for the DAO, of course, that can be in many ways interesting, because more activity on the chain will generate more fees, and kind of the DAO partially also has ownership in some of the apps. That is my proposal, and we'll write that out in much more detail and share in the forum. So much for the Gnosis perspective. Switching back, or maybe one last slide. So again, a reminder already in the opening talk, but we, so hopefully many of you have already seen, we released this wallet, Metri, that is trying to combine all those things and be a portal for users, or kind of a thing for users to enjoy that and to kind of become a Circles/Gnosis user. Switching back to Circles head. So yeah, we hopefully get this project going with Gnosis DAO, but of course that is only one way to bootstrap things. So we need, of course, midterm and long-term other ways to make Circles sustainable. And here is one important contrast, and that's a contrast between resilience and efficiency. So resilience and Circles has initially maxed out on the resilience side. So resilience means that the system is built in such a way that some part of the system here should not affect another part of the system here. And that is given in Circles through the thing I introduced earlier with the Sybil attack protection. And that is, very important and very nice. It comes, of course, at the downside of complexity. And many of you might have already experienced that you want to send and circle someone and somewhere and it doesn't work. It says no capacity, whatever. You don't even really understand why it doesn't work. And that's kind of, quote unquote, too much resilience. On the other extreme, you have, things like, let's say, again, WorldCoin, where there's only one way to think about it is that everyone is there trusting everyone as soon as they do this orb thing, which of course means if somehow, somewhere, someone finds a mechanism or a way to game that system and create tons of users, it essentially affects the whole system and can take down the whole system. So, when it works, it's more efficient and much easier, but again, way less resilience. And the missing piece that we are adding to circles are groups. So in circles, again, so far it's just peer-to-peer trust, but we want to establish many, many groups and allow also kind of you to trust a group or kind of be automatically trusted by a group. So that makes, in a way, finds, in our view, the middle ground. So how does this concrete look like? We will have an app where it's very easy to define your own group. And then we can, of course, also support those groups in specific ways. Working on a nice program that those groups can also become local validators of the chain or have some in some places there, let's say DApp nodes running. Those rewards can also be some factor that stabilizes this group currency or kind of provides some form of income or reserve for this group currency. So more on that. There's a second or a third concept, and that is very similar to regional currencies that have existed for a long time, many in Germany, but also Bristol pound and in Switzerland. And how they usually work is that they are very closely tied to the fiat money, because ultimately for shop, of course, it's a big ask or a big pain to say. Even just accounting-wise and tax-wise, and kind of to say, okay, I accept euros, but then I also accept this other thing. And so how regional currencies often did it is that they more or less created, and they found also ways to do that legally and kind of part of the regular economy, quote unquote. They found ways to say, okay, we are creating let's for now call it just Berlin euro, that is meant to be 1-to-1 a euro, but it can in a way only be spent locally in Berlin and only with people who are participating in this scheme. However, everyone who is accepting that euro, this is Berlin euro, has the option to say if they are not able to spend it because people who are there local are not offering what this person needs, then you have the option to exit, quote unquote, so essentially get quote unquote real euros, but that comes with an exit tax of, let's say, 10%. And that, of course, encourages, if you are trying to spend that money locally. And again, this is something we can and should replicate in circles. So if we have those groups that I described previously, it's quite easy to create essentially the equivalent to those regional currencies. Cool. I want to end the talk with just some technicalities. We are working, or we have almost completed new contracts. So right now, if you're using Circles, you're still using the contracts from 2020, and they were not perfect. They had a bunch of smaller, bigger problems, and we are trying to fix all of them. And there will be a migration process. So Circles as a system will completely be continuous. So all balances, all trust is meant to be taken over to the new system. But for those who are a little bit deeper into it, few points. So those group currencies. Maybe some of you remember last time DappCon, where we already tried to explore with that or use that as Humans of Gnosis token, but it was a big pain because it was not really compatible and had different denominations and just hard to use. And now group currencies will be natively part of circles. You can also explicitly trust group circles, and they are interchangeable in this trust graph. This demurrage versus inflation will be native. That was another point of pain right now, that the balances you see on the interface are actually different from the balances on the blockchain, because we do this demurrage only on an interface level. There were some flow constraints that lead often to a situation that you cannot send someone circles even if they trust you. Then happy news for everyone who has an old Circles account that is probably frozen, because in the old rules, if you wouldn't mint for at least 3 months, then your account was permanently frozen. Many of those who had a Circles account in 2020 might be in the stage. Good news, you just have to wait for the release and for the 2.0 release, and then your account, you can keep your account with Trust Connections, and it will start producing circles again. And last thing, technicality again. In the previous version, we had lots of ERC20 tokens. Now we are using 1155 standard, but not so important. Cool. I want to end the talk and say, yeah, we believe it is time to bring fair and decentralized money to the quote-unquote big world, and we believe we are prepared for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. It can sometimes be lost that money is a form of speech, so thank you for your great talk. We have a few moments for questions, and right down here at the front.
Thank you, Martin. I want to ask about if there is a possibility to bring privacy, given the graph, if you can compute in a privacy way. And maybe a stupid question, why 7%? We know 2% inflation.
No, for sure.
How is that calculated?
Right. So maybe starting with the 7% question. Actually, if you look at the expansion of money, so if you just look at the dollar, let's say, over the last 50 years, and you calculate the average increase of money supply from each year to the next year, then it is actually 7%. So it is more or less taking the parameter that is somewhat working or somewhat really well working. Of course, inflation was lower for a long time, and or probably also will be lower than 7%. But that is because just more goods are produced. So if every year also 7% more goods would be produced, then, I mean, again, very simplified math, but then let's say inflation would be 0. Maybe growth was only, again, super simplified math, 5%, so inflation is the difference. What that would mean for circles is that it's quite possible that the value of a circle, of a single circle, will actually go up over time. Your second question, privacy, yes. There are at least 2 things to it. One is, right now, everything is public. It's public, the trust graph is public, but also all kind of payments are public. The quite, quote-unquote, easy part would be to make payments private. Doing the trust graph also private is much harder, but certainly possible, and there are people researching on it. With groups, it becomes significantly easier to add privacy, because if you have, because essentially if you have a group currency, you have a single currency within that group, and then you can just use established privacy pools where people within that group can transact privately, or maybe if they want to transact across groups, then you just see someone out of this group transacted with someone out of that group, but not more details. We have also here prototypes, or even at last DappCon, there is a project called Bermuda Bay working on exactly that, and even have integrated that with circles.
We had another question down here.
Yeah, I have a question about the social aspect of it. How do we penetrate these big people? How do we get into them, right? Is it marketing? Is it people in the field? Or just multiplying pilots? How do you get to the people?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the tradition here is that we are actually trying in that proposal. I would say we should try to get Gnosis products to the people, things like Gnosis Pay, and initially use circles, quote unquote, just as a way to get extra benefits. So, I mean, again, a very simple example is the Pay product, where people often enjoy things like cashback or some form of reward program. So I would say short term, that can be a totally valid tactic. But of course, there need to be many ones. So the second one I mentioned here was groups, and essentially making it very easy and also allowing very different forms of groups or communities to start in different places, and maybe also with very different approaches, and essentially try to feed those where we see that organic activity is emerging. In principle, I would say if Circles somewhat works, it's very, very easy to grow it, because, I mean, who doesn't like free money? I mean, or how we once did a test with ChatGPT to create a marketing phrase, or kind of agents to create marketing phrases for Circles, and they came up with what's better than free money? Free money every day. So, yeah.
We're unfortunately out of time. Please, you can find Martin outside, and you can talk to him personally. Thank you so much, Martin, for your great talk.